Welcome to the Next Gen Podcast. Stepping up to the microphone are your hosts, Bryson Wright and Alex Winton. They got next, so let's get to the show.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Next Gen Podcast here on the Bluff City Media Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Bryson Wright, and I'm joined by my co-host, Alex Winton. And we got a lot of stuff to get to. Obviously, we didn't have one last week. Kind of took a little bit of a week off. But we got 15 games left in the season. Obviously, been a tough one overall with the injuries and everything like that. Because that's going to be one of the first things we get to. Obviously, we'll talk about these last couple games. You know, they just lost to the Hornets, beat the Wizards the night before. Which was like probably the funniest back-to-back that you could possibly have this late in the season. Would be like Wizards then Hornets. But it went about how I would expect it to. I figured they'd probably go 1-1 on a back-to-back. They haven't really been great on the back-to-backs, and then the injuries just keep being even crazier. With Jaren now having tendonitis, and he's been out. See if he'll be able to come back this weekend. But yeah, Jaren being out. Vince Williams Jr. also being out. Gigi even missed a game there. So, like, there's been, like, it's just the continuous thing of a lot of different guys being out, new players coming in. Grizzlies got Wenyen Gabriel and DeJon Jarreau in there, both on 10-day contracts. I think both of them have done all right. You know, I do like the way Jarreau plays a lot. Like, I like him. He's like a real hooper to me. I liked him when he was at Houston, and I liked the way that he played in his minutes. Definitely got a lot of confidence and everything like that. And I don't know if he's going to end up staying on the Grizzlies or anything like that, but I like the way he's played, you know. So shout out to him for getting his opportunity. Same for Wenyen Gabriel. It's been like a lot of that kind of stuff, I feel like, this year. Is like different people getting opportunities and everything like that. That's been one of the main things that I have actually enjoyed about this season. Another one of those guys being Trey Jemison, who had his biggest game of the season with 24 points. So that was awesome to see, not just for him, but also for his family. I know that was a really big moment for him. So it's like those little things like that kind of make the blow of the season being as bad as it has been overall a little bit easier to take, especially at this point in the year. But yeah, 15 games left. Got some stuff coming up on the horizon we'll get to in terms of who's going to be back, who's not going to play the rest of the season. But yeah, hopefully, like, I've liked the way they've competed. I think that's the main thing I can say the last couple games is all the games are going down to the wire. Defensively, I think they've been pretty good. They just don't have, like, I feel like, you know, we've been saying it all year. When they have these guys out, they just don't have the offense. They don't have, like, the NBA offense. Like, they got to be, like, 110, 115 a game in the NBA these days if you want to win games. And they're not gonna hit that with the roster they got now. They might get to 100, like 100, 105. That's usually probably about the max you're gonna get though, and that's just not enough to win on a nightly basis. But I feel like they're doing a lot of good things, like I said, especially on the defensive end. You know, but on the offensive end, it's just gonna be tough for them.
Yeah, that's always. I'm just over here laughing because that's always what I've been saying. You just don't got that talent. I've said it all the time. Y'all see me on Twitter every time. I say it all the time. They got the worst offensive talent I've ever seen in the modern NBA from a shot making standpoint. Like they don't have a lot of guys that can make shots. When literally in the league, most teams got players that don't even get no minutes, barely get minutes, and they can come in and knock down 3-4 shots at least like a 35, 36, 37% clip. And they're not even getting no minutes. Meanwhile, the Grizzlies, they got like two guys, maybe 2 or 3. Because Gigi was hot for a minute, but his jumper's been abandoning him so far. But I mean, I don't think he's, I think it's just like a stretch. But like, I can remember name like 3, maybe 4 guys we got that can shoot at league average. Everybody else is like below average. And then on top of that, it's not even the factor in there. Probably, I haven't checked it in a minute, but I'm pretty sure they still bottom half or bottom 5 in 2-point percentage. So they're not making a lot of layups. Sure, I seen us smoke 3-4 layups in the last game yesterday against Charlotte. Like, you know what I mean? Like, It's just the talent's not there, and so that's really what I always say. Like you can do so much. You can only do so much coaching, but when your talent ain't being able to put the ball, in the hole, it's gonna be hard. So, but again, I feel like the guys out here try to play hard in most of these games, try to compete. They've obviously quote unquote have done if you know what people talk about like the good type of tanking or like good time where they have again or like they'll have the lead, then they might lose it, but then they'll play close and they end up losing at the end. That's kind of what the Grizzlies have happened. But they've won a couple of these games. Like obviously, like they beat Washington and they kind of were up in most of that game, but Washington tried to come back. Then in the OKC game, there was really nothing. Like they just didn't have a chance. It is what it is. The Atlanta game, I thought they could have won, but then, like I said, they had the lead, lost the lead. Then it was close for like the whole third or fourth quarters, and they ended up just losing that game. And then the Philly game was kind of the same thing. I think they were down in that game, and then they came back and won it. So, again, these games are going to be kind of like that. And like you said, their scores are always going to be kind of low. Like I'm pretty sure the highest scored game they had was against, it was against Philly. They had 115. Every other game they was like below. It was like they had 92 against the Hawks, 93 against OKC, 109 against who was it, Washington, and then yesterday was 98. So like they're barely cracking 110, 15 points. And that's the average. Like I think somebody said it before, but like I forgot where I heard it on a pod, but like literally the Grizzlies offensive rating now would be like in like I think 2008 or 2010 or something like that would be like middle of the pack of the league. And they're last by like a good margin. So this just goes to show you how much the game has changed and how much that you have to modernize your roster. So that's what obviously the offseason is going to be for. And obviously, having guys continue to improve on the team like GG, Vince, obviously Jerry and Bane, like all those guys. But again, they're making what they can of the situation. Obviously, players know that, coaches know that. Like the coaches really only care about the effort. Like Jenkins was only mad about I think a couple times. Like he cares about the effort at this point. Like when they got, I think I forgot what game, but like those back-to-back Portland games, he didn't like. I think the first one, he was like, "We got punked. Like it was embarrassing, this and that." Like that was the type of stuff they don't want. They want the games where we've seen this last week or so, where they're competing and doing stuff like that and focus and attention to detail. So, yeah, I think obviously it's been tough, but again, they understand. Like, look, this is to, and we're gonna get into it with the guys coming back. But there, a lot of these games, these last 15 games are gonna be spent basically as a springboard for next season, getting ready for next season to kind of give you momentum into the next season. So that's really the main focus for them, I think, at this point.
Yeah, no question about that. And talking about like the guys who have been playing before we kind of get to who's coming back, or I guess we can also talk Scottie Pippen Jr. as well because he did just come back for his first game. I thought he played really well. Had his first double-digit assist game. Had NBA legend Scottie Pippen in the house too. Had some Grizzlies legends as well with Zach Randolph and Tony Allen out there too. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, I'm happy that Scottie is back now from his back injury or whatever. I had a feeling that they would try to they would slow play it, but they would kind of bring him back so that he could start the rest of the games. Which now, because of his two-way contract, he will be able to start the rest of the games or at least play in all the rest of the games. But considering the main issue that they've really had is they don't have a true point guard. I think that he's probably going to be starting a good amount of the rest of the season. And like I said, I thought he played good. Like I said, 10 assists, had a little poster dunk. I didn't know he had the hops like that when he got up there on that one. So I was happy to see him kind of play pretty well in that game, and hopefully we can continue to see him kind of develop a little bit because one of the things going into this offseason that we are going to have to think about is what the Grizzlies are going to do about a backup point guard. Because, obviously when Ja's back, he should be, starting. Will Smart be starting, coming off the bench, whatever, but he's most likely going to be starting. He can maybe play some of that backup point guard role, but it's hard to do that and also start at the three. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how they play that. But I think if Scottie Pippen Jr. plays really well, even if he's not going to be the main second point guard, I think he could be the third point guard on the roster who might have to step up if somebody gets hurt again next year or something like that. So I think that his development and him learning the system now can be super important. And I've liked the way he's played. In all the games he's played, I've liked the way he played. I kind of like the way he I like the way he has like a nice feel for the game, especially like getting to the rim. I feel like he always kind of knows how to finish. Like he knows how to get to his spots and where he's best at finishing a lot of the time. Sometimes I do think he gets a little ahead of himself, but when he's like in control, he makes those quick movements, but they're not like he's not out of control, right? So as long as he can kind of stay in his own lane, kind of stay in his role, the role that he has been playing, kind of like he was the other night, where he might have 9 points and 10 assists, and he's more of a facilitator who can attack if I need to, kind of like the way Tyus used to play as well. Like I think that's he's not as efficient as Tyus in terms of like the turnovers. He does turn the ball over a lot more, but in terms of how I'd want him to play, I think it would be similar to that.
Yeah, no, I'm I'm a fan of Scottie Pippen. I mean, not or Scottie Pippen Jr. I should say. I've been a fan for a minute. Obviously, I think I've said it before. I might have said it before. I know I said it probably Twitter or group chats, but I've always been a fan since he's been at Vanderbilt. Maybe even in high school when he's at Sierra Canyon. Like I always liked to be an NBA player. I just thought the Lakers situation again. It's all about situation too. I just think the Lakers situation was hard for him to kind of get any opportunity, and obviously this opportunity presented itself because we had so many injuries, and he played well. Obviously he didn't have as many games because of the whole two-way thing and all that, 10 days and all that, whatever. And then I think the injury, obviously, which has been I won't say a blessing in disguise, but I mean again, he's eligible for the rest of these games. Had he not got hurt, we wouldn't be able to have him for the rest of these games. So that injury now is kind of giving him the runway to basically just have these 15 games, hopefully, and like you said, hopefully, in my opinion, which I hope is to start these games, considering that they don't have a really point guard outside of him. Goodwin, Rose is hurt, so they don't really have any guys that are point guards in that type of way that are really looking to facilitate. Obviously, they're going to play lineups where they got probably Luke. Obviously, we'll get to it, Bane and other guys like that, but like I would like to see Scotty starting with those guys, even when you get Jaren back, you get Vince back. I would like to see him with that because, like you said, for me personally, again, I look at it as they already got 3 guards next year, 3 or 4 guards, you could say, in their rotation. Obviously, you're gonna have Jaren, or you're gonna have Ja, you're gonna have Bane, you're gonna have Smart, and you count Luke as guys that I guess you could say combo guards in a sense. For the most part, you could count all them as combo guards. I mean, Bane is obviously he can play a little bit more to threes. Smart's going to guard threes, but more times than not, you could see them being lead ball handlers or main ball handlers. So, like you said, I think that's kind of really the goal for them, or should be the goal for him in a sense. Is like being maybe that third backup, that third string guard or that fourth string guard. And again, because I do think Rose will be on the roster, even though he's not going to play. I do think he's going to serve a role, obviously, as like the Haslam guy. Like that's what I think his role is. And unfortunately, that's not been his role this year because of the injuries and stuff like that, and because of roster construction. He had to play when in reality he's not supposed to play many minutes at all, if any at all. He's supposed to be the guy that's supposed to help in the locker room and then play. Obviously, when whether you're getting blown out or or you blowing the team out. So I do think Scotty could by the end of next year, or maybe as soon as this year, who knows, or as soon as this upcoming season, I should say, be on the main roster. I do think that is a possibility because again, I do think he provides a lot of value. I think he's a player. Now, I don't think could he be a backup point guard, maybe potentially, who knows, maybe down the line, I don't know. But I do think he's an NBA player, and I do think he needs a actual spot, or he's going to get a spot sooner or later. But yeah, I definitely would. I won't say prioritize his development, but definitely, obviously, I think now that he's back, you give him the runway to show, to get this opportunity and chance, as Jenkins likes to call it, quote unquote, growth opportunities. Give him these reps to basically, see what he could be. Because again, if he continues to show what he did last night, who's wrong for them to say, hey, we can make, obviously, because they're going to make moves this offseason. They're not going to have everybody on. It's not going to be the same roster. They're going to be spots available. And if they consolidate and get more vets and people like that and that, that nature, some people are going to go and they're going to have to fill roster spots. They might as well just convert him by then. You never know. So, but yeah, I am glad he is back because I do think he is a good player. One of the few we got, one of the few that I think is actual NBA player, in my opinion. No disrespect to everybody else. But yeah, and the team just looks different when they have an NBA point guard out there. Now I know it didn't really look great last night, The process was like the results wasn't there, but I felt like the process was a little bit better at times. Now I will say he turned the ball over last night, but to be fair, the Grizzlies turned the ball. They had 21 turnovers last night. I felt like they turned the ball over every possession down. They just was not locked in overall. So I'm gonna give them a pass. Second night of a back to back, I'm gonna let it slide. You know what I mean? But yeah, I'm hoping that to see him play the rest of the way.
Yeah, for sure. And then, he just came back and we did get some good news and some good updates for at least two Grizzlies that should be coming back. Desmond Bane was doubtful for the last game. I'm expecting that he should be playing on Saturday. Usually the way that the Grizzlies do it is if you are doubtful the game before, that usually means you're coming back the next game. That's just kind of been how they've done it the last couple of years. And so he was doubtful, and then I'm pretty sure Jaren was also doubtful in that. But
Yeah, he was. He was.
yeah, so like both of them should hopefully be able to play in that game. We'll see. I know with Jaren it's like a tendonitis thing, and it feels like it's something he's just kind of been dealing with on and off all season, kind of dealing with on and off, whatever. So it is what it is. I'm sure that they needed to give him some rest games as well. But I have a feeling he's gonna make it to that 65 game mark. That's what I feel like he's going for at this point. Which I don't know how many he's at now. I'll have to check in a second, but he should be getting pretty close. I think if he probably plays the last 10 games, he'll get there. So
Yeah, he's at 57.
he's at 57. Yeah, so that I guarantee you he's going to end at like 65, 66 games because that's the cutoff to be on any kind of awards or anything like that. Um, but yeah, I think getting Bane back, I'm just gonna be excited to watch him, like watch him on the court again, man, because I hate that the injury happened when it did because it really felt like he was starting to come into his own and really be like an all-star. Like we were pretty close to being able to push like some all-star stuff for Desmond Bane. Obviously the record wasn't there, but in terms of the way he was playing, like you can't tell me that dude was not playing at an all-star level. So to see him get hurt when he did just was really sad, especially because that was kind of when you knew like he's probably not going. I'm glad he's at least coming back before the end of the season. It's kind of like giving Grizzlies fans something to be like, hey, I know it's been bad this year, but we got. Let's show you a sneak peek of what we're gonna have next year, plus a lottery pick, plus guys we trade for, whatever. But just seeing Bane and Jaren on the court again at the same time after seeing all these games where it's just been Jaren and people on 10 days and two ways and all that kind of stuff. Like I'm just happy to see that again, and I know that Jaren's got to be happy about it too. Like the whole team's got to be happy to get him back. We'll see what's going on with Vince Williams as well, but I just want like 5 to 10 games. Obviously, Ja's not going to be there, but if we can just get 5 to 10 games where we have Bane and Jaren out there together with Vince, Gigi, like those guys, like the core guys who think are going to be back, and then look at some other guys who I think could possibly be back in terms of like Lamar Stevens possibly being back on the deal and everything like that. So I just want to see like what those kind of what do they look like playing out there on the court together. Just because we haven't really seen it, I feel like Gigi has come on so late in the year, kind of because of the injuries, that he hasn't really played with anybody that he's going to be playing with next year besides Vince and Jared. So it's like I like to see go out there, see what he looks like with BC. Let's see if we can get some Bane and BC pick and roll, like shoot something. Like let's see what he looks like. Obviously, with that Achilles injury, that's something that we're going to be monitoring and kind of seeing how he looks because his game is so predicated on his athleticism. So it's like that Achilles injury could be a really big issue. But from the videos and stuff that I've seen, he looks like he's kind of progressing at a good pace. He's playing 5-on-5 again. So even if it's only 5 or 10 games, like I think it could be good to see him. I think it could be good for his confidence going into the offseason to kind of know, like, I already know I can play back on an NBA level. I've done it. Now I can focus on offseason so that when he comes back next year, obviously there's still some pressure because he's coming off an Achilles and all that. But it's not that, the first game of the season and it's my first game back from Achilles injury. Like, all of that isn't, he can go into the offseason with the confidence of being like, I'm fully recovered. I don't have to do as much in terms of rehab. I can focus on what I need to get better on. And I'm hoping that he can get to that point based on the games that he plays the rest of the season.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is a funny thing how things change. That injury report came out and everybody was like, well, at least me, I was like, Saturday ain't gonna be a movie. Because like you said, that's usually how it goes. They say doubtful, probably come back next game. It's gonna be questionable next game, and then they're gonna wait till last. Now, granted, I will say there have been some times where people been questionable and been out. Like this game I'm looking at right now, Adama and Stevens, they both had injuries. They were questionable. They was out. So they could pull the little switcheroo or fool us at the end. They be like, oh, they're questionable. Oh, they're out. And then that's just the typical Grizzly thing. I can see them doing that. But I do think they're gonna play. So, and again, like you said, I think a lot of it comes down to just for me. That's why I've always been pro playing because I think I said it here. I've said it everywhere. I want these guys to come back if they can. I know people worry about there's no reason for them to come back and all this other stuff, and I kind of get it. I understand it. Main thing for me is this situation is a lot different than other situations. Usually, guys that are sitting injuries or tanking injuries, a lot of the time they're tanking or sitting. A lot of those guys are usually older players, usually guys that are in their 30s or early 30s or right in the prime of their career. And then on top of that, that team is probably just bad. Now, I will say this team, even fully healthy, I had questions about, but they were not this bad. Well, if they were fully healthy, they were not going to be this bad. They might have been, even if they were in the plan, or they probably are more closer to 6 or 7, you know what I mean, or 5, right at range, 5 to 8 range versus 13 to 15 in the West. Like anybody can see that. So even in that, that tells you that the situation is different. And then when you not only have that context, you add the context of, like we said, with Gigi, with Vince, guys that emerged when these guys were hurt for the most part. I mean, Vince played with like the iteration of like when John first came back, but obviously Vince is a different player than he is now, or Vince is a different player now than he was then. The same for Gigi. Gigi now is a different player than he was. He wasn't even on the roster yet. He wasn't even on a contract yet. So I want to see those guys get reps with the guys they're going to be playing with next year, because you would think those guys are probably both going to be in rotation in some type of substantial form next year. So why not get them reps with the people they're going to be playing with next year, especially when the expectation next year, or should be the expectation, is, hey, Grizzlies should go into the season and feel like they can actually win an NBA championship, not some dark horse championship, but actually like, oh, if things go right, they can win a championship. That's how they feel. I mean, even the GM said it. That's why my expectations be so high, because these be coming out the people that we be supporting's mouth. Zach Kline even said it. This is a championship window that seems like it's open now. So that should be the expectation. So we need to get them reps to be ready for what's going to be next, because it's not going to be like this yet next year, where they're going to be, I mean, they're going to be able to make mistakes, but obviously they're going to probably be, the leash is going to be shorter for a lot of stuff they're doing. Obviously, Gigi's gotten better and stuff like that, but Gigi will have his moments where he's turning the ball over a little bit too much, shot selection is a little off, or he'll make mistakes like he did last time, like last night. But again, he's playing hard and through him, you know what I mean? But again, my point is, you want to see him with better talent too, because it's going to not only help his game, it's going to help everybody else's game. Like Gigi, I think shout out to my boy Cam. He was talking about it one day, or I think in the group chat I'm in. He was basically saying like, Gigi, because Gigi was really shooting corner threes most of the time, like catch and shoot. If you really think about it, Gigi ain't really gotten a lot of corner threes so much, because now he's probably on the scout report. Imagine now Gigi out there with Bane, and now they can't really help off of Gigi now. Now that's more of a driving lane for him, or for Jaren. They can't really help him now. So now if they're helping off even more, again, pick your poison. You know what I mean? Now they can spray out the guys that make shots, and not only Gigi can make a shot, he can attack and close out. Same with Vince. These guys can actually make shots. So, you want to see them with not only that, but Vince now with the playmaking. I would like to see Vince. I mean, obviously he's not going to be on the ball as much as he is now when these guys are back, but he can do to be a secondary or third playmaker, where you're swinging the ball around, and then he has to make a play real quick, or attack a closeout, or he's attacking off a screen that he's coming off of, and then he can make a read out of it. Like imagine him getting a screen set by BC, then he's coming out, he's curling it, then he's either getting a floater and they got to help, then he's dumping it off to BC, something like that. Like I want to see him in these actions with players that he's gonna be playing with, and so I think all that's beneficial, and because they're probably gonna win these games too. I'm just gonna be very honest, they're going to probably win these games because if they just had a little ounce of talent, they probably because again they're still defending. That's the thing. People don't understand. That's why Jaren's still playing for these games, like you're talking about. Jaren's the one who want to get into that 65 because you know why this team's still top 10 defensively. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I haven't checked in a couple of days, but they're still top 10 defensively. Now, a lot of that goes to the personnel. A lot of that goes to Jenkins. We're going to give him some credit. Again, I'll be on Jenkins' head, but you don't just be a good defense, off of the simple fact of, we just got the players. No, you got to coach person like, you got to coach that up. That's one of the main things in chemistry too. So, I think, again, like, when you have all that, you're going to add a little bit more offensive talent. I think, these games will be a lot more competitive, but not only competitive, more entertaining for us. Because, again, Grizzlies fans are going through it.
Yes.
We've been going through it because it's been bad. So that's really it. Like the game's gonna be more entertaining for us. Like I miss Desmond Bane playing basketball. We miss, I miss Desmond Bane playing. Even Bane and Clarke miss him playing basketball. We miss all them playing basketball because they're good NBA players and fun NBA players. And we got players that again that need reps and all that. Like it's just gonna be a more enjoyable game. Even if they lose, we know we at least got some NBA talent out there. It's gonna be more exciting. These games are not gonna be hard. Not hard to watch. Sometimes you got your moments, but most of these games they're missing wide open shots, or and again, some of this is not their fault. We don't got point guards out there. Sometimes they got to make something out of nothing, like Vince does. We get it. I understand, but having more talent out there should make everybody else's job easier and life better. So that's what I'm hoping for. Just hoping to be entertaining. Listen, I can be bad, like I always say about even shout out to the Titans. I can be bad, but I want to be entertaining. I don't want it to be bad and we can't throw a rock in the ocean offensively. We can't put points on the board. I want to be able to at least put some type of have a competent offense, even if we lose. I want to be able to see look at the box. But okay, we lost like 115 to 118. I'll be all right, cool. You know what I mean? Right now, at this point, I want exciting and entertaining stuff right now. Because again, we're past the winning because all the situations. But I just want to be exciting, fun, entertaining. So yeah, that's really it.
Nah, yeah, and I think that's a big part of it too. Just because I think added Bane in itself is going to make the offense take another jump. And I like to see really who he's going to be out there with. It really is going to depend on who else is coming back. So we'll see if Vince can come back. Assuming Lamar Stevens and all those people will be back as well. But I think just added Bane just by itself is going to take the offense to another level. Uh, it's like when you actually have another dude that you can never leave him, right? Because right now it's basically just been Luke, and then people have been getting out to Gigi on the 3-point line a lot better. But it's like everybody else, they kind of like will live with it, right? And just adding another dude where you can't just be like, oh, we'll live with it. Like you can't live with Desmond Bane taking an open three because that's how you lose. So I'm really excited to see that. I am excited, like you said, to see what Vince looks like with those guys as well. I think that's a big part of it. I think that if he comes back, he's probably going to be playing less on the ball, kind of like you said. But I wouldn't be surprised if they play some with him and Bane, and then also let Bane, run off screens, be kind of an off-ball kind of person. Maybe they alternate some possessions. Some possessions he gets, his ISO opportunities, and then some possessions Vince will be bringing it up and kind of be like that connective passer that he has been all season. Because he's been great in that role when it comes to assisting. Obviously, he doesn't necessarily have the ball handling you need to be like a true point guard. But I think when it comes to his passing, his jump shot, stuff like that, I think he's good enough to do it, especially for stretches. And I think it's going to help him just get better in his role as well, just to keep playing some point guard minutes. I think that's what they did with Desmond Bane. That's why Desmond Bane got as good as he is now. It's because they let him play point guard in the summer league, and then he came back with better ball handling, better driving to the basket, better finishing around the rim, because he had to do more stuff on his own rather than have people set him up. And I think that's something Vince can do is he can do a lot more like on his own, but I think also him setting other people up is going to be a big thing, and I think it's going to be a big part of the offense next year too. We've been seeing him throwing lobs and everything like that too. So seeing him run some pick and rolls, especially with BC coming back, we'll hopefully that first BC lob. Hopefully he catches one, but that first BC lob is going to hit. I'm very excited for that, and I'm putting my bet down for Vince throwing the first lob to Bane and Clarke. That's what I'm putting down as what's going to happen and how that's going to go. But the last thing I did want to get to kind of before we close is the other side of it to talk about the last 15 games is the draft, lottery, draft odds, stuff like that. So right now, the Grizzlies are 6. They are slotted to get the 6th pick. They obviously will have a chance to get higher than that. But if they stay at 6 right now, they basically have like a 37% chance to get a top 4 pick, right? Now, we've said it on the pod before that we believe the NBA does have some ulterior motives when it comes to the draft lottery and how it works. I don't know. Maybe that's just a little tinfoil hat conspiracy guy in me that's like, I don't know. But if we're going based on the odds and everything like that, 37% chance to be in the top 4. I'm taking that, right? But the big thing is going to come down to, are they going to be 6 or 7? Because at 7, you basically have like a 5% less chance of doing that, of being in the top 4. And to me, obviously, it'd be cool to get number 1. I think they'd have like a 9% chance to get the number 1 pick. Which getting the number 1 pick would be awesome, definitely. But I'm keeping it low. Look, let's see if we can get top 4. They can get a top 4 pick. I'm sleeping well. I'm sleeping very well, as Alex would say. Because some people say this is a weak draft class, and I'll agree it's weak maybe in terms of top tier talent, as in, hey, if you want this guy to be like your franchise player, he might not be in this draft. But if you want a guy who can play a role, if you want a guy that's like not to build your roster around, but to be be the stuff you're building around with. Like if that's what you're looking for, which is where the Grizzlies are at now, they're looking for cheap players that can come in and make an impact immediately. And I think if they get into the top 4, they'll be able to do that, no question. And there's a lot of guys in this draft class that could play a role, especially for this Grizzlies team, that we'll have a good chance to watch over the next couple of weeks, which I'll kind of talk about. I'll throw it to you first. With March Madness coming. So I got a couple guys that I want y'all to look out for, but I'll kind of get to that after I let Alex go first.
Yeah, I mean, listen, y'all know me. I don't be looking at. I mean, I look at the odds. I used to be on the Tankathon a lot, especially when was it 2018, 2019? Yeah, when Jaren's rookie year, before we got John. Yeah, I was on Tankathon a lot. But then once I realized after that, this thing's rigged. It don't matter. The Grizz could lose out, and they could end up. And I still wouldn't believe they get one. That's how I feel. Now, listen, if they do get one, that tells me a couple things. It tells me Adam Silver's messing with us. They done forgot about the Josh stuff. They're like, hey, we forgiven them. If they hadn't, then listen, they still got a gripe. They still got a grudge. But it's okay. I'm not mad at it regardless. They're going to have lottery pick. They can't get rid of the lottery pick. They can't do that. They're going to have some type of pick. They can't get rid of it. Now, where it lands, they can control, but they can't get rid of the pick. But, yeah, I mean, listen, I think the thing with the odds is if you look at it, if you look at the teams, like, they're not catching top 5. Like, Portland won those 2 games against us, and they're still 3 games behind us. Like, and they're probably not going to win another game. I just want to let y'all know that. I mean, I lied. They won yesterday. They beat the Hawks. But they're not going to win too many games. Like, they might win 1 game every 5 to 8 games. Grizzlies, if I look, I don't know what to say. I would have to look at the last 15. But depending on who plays in them games, I can see us winning. Especially I hope most of these games at home and they could be better at home. Please win some home games. I'm tired of losing at home. This is terrible. That's just a random thought I had. Tired of losing at home. It stinks. But in terms of the odds, like right now, they're basically at 6, and you looking at them like Toronto's right after them. Then it's like Brooklyn, then it's Utah. Then after that, it's like playing teams. Well, Atlanta's a playing team in the East. They're at 10. But now it's like 30 and 35, 30 and 32, and that's all like back in the lottery. So basically their range is anywhere, I'm gonna say from 6 to 9. That's probably where the Grizzlies are gonna fall. That's probably the range you're probably safe betting at, like the Grizzlies will be, or where they'll fall. Now they jump top 4. I mean, again, Bryce said he's sleeping well. I might sleep well, depends on where it lands, right? If we're going top 4, just give me one. Depending, and it also depends on who's the top 4, right? Because if we're going to talk about prospects, the only one I really care, I'm not going to say care about, but the one I would like to do, like I said, I like these players. Like, I'm going to be cool. We draft somebody and we have them on the roster. But the one player I'll be like, okay, that I'm cool with depending on in terms of like having a substantial role next season is Sarr. Alexander Sarr, Alex Sarr, however you want to call him. He's the one dude I would be comfortable with. But but he's probably going to be at 1. So they would probably have to get 1 or top 2 or something just to get him, depending on who's in the top 3 or 4. Because not everybody in the lottery needs a big. Like the Spurs get 1. I don't know if they're gonna take Sarr. They might, but because again, this is draft where there's not a real clear number 1 guy. I mean, most people say Sarr, but some people like I'm not agreeing with this. I like Reed Shepherd. There's like I think it was the Ringer that had him like number 1. Then you might see somebody else have
there's like a wide range.
Yeah,
there's
a wide range.
I've seen Sarr at 1, and I've seen Sarr as low as 7. Right?
Yeah.
And I can say the same for like Reed Shepherd. I think you're right. It was the Ringer that had him at 1. I've seen him at 1, and I've seen him at like 10, 11. Like, so a lot of these guys have big ranges in terms of what it looks like they're going to go.
Yeah, exactly. And so for me, it's like you want it. All depends on order and situation. Like Washington, listen, I'm telling y'all that now. Washington's the team I worry about if I'm gonna take Sarr because they need a big. They got no bigs. They traded Gafford. They got no bigs. They bigs is Rashawn Holmes and Marvin Bagley, and I like both of them. But I'm pretty sure they're more powerful than backup bigs. They need a big where they be like he's a franchise big. Now Sarr, he might not be like again like we're saying they might not be cornerstones where you build them around it, build your team around them, but they can be a piece of your franchise. You know what I mean? Guys that like secondary pieces and all, and that's fine. People understand. Not everybody has to be the superstar. It's hard to find superstars in every draft. It just doesn't happen. But there are some really good players in the draft that I'm fans of that I really think are gonna be good players. So, I think obviously I know you're finna get to it, but I like Sarr, like Matas, like Furphy from Kansas. Like there's a couple people I like for the Grizzlies for real. And we'll talk about that as once we get closer to, like tournaments over, close to the end of the season, all that. But those are like 3 names that I really like out of everybody for the Grizzlies. And they're basically in the range to get all those guys, I would say. Because Furphy's like middle, back, mid first, maybe late lottery. Matas is like anywhere from like high-end lottery to maybe middle of the lottery. And then obviously Sarr is like high-end lottery. So like we're all in that range. So, I do feel good about that they're in the range of guys that I like. Now, it all depends on if they like them or not. I don't know. I'm not in the front office. I love to be in the front office. Love to know people in the front office, but I don't. I'll just be talking crap about them and making jokes. But
Nah, that's funny.
yeah, but yeah, I don't know. But I would love. But I would love to know.
There's a lot of players that I feel like the Grizzlies could look at. There's a couple that I wanted to talk about just because March Madness is coming up. I love March Madness. I'll be honest, I don't watch like a ton of college basketball during the year. I watch Tennessee. That's my team. Shout out SC Player of the Year, Dalton Connect. He's on my list of players to watch for you in the NCAA tournament as well. In terms of possible Grizzlies picks, I'd probably say probably not him, but there's a chance he's definitely in the running. Cody Williams from Colorado, younger brother of Jalen Williams, who plays for the Thunder, and we just saw how good he is a couple nights ago when he played there. He's been really good for Colorado all season. I don't know if he's necessarily as good as his brother was, but I mean, he's got the track record of being good in college. I think his brother turned out as well as he did has helped him out a lot. But I want to be mad at seeing him. That's something if they move into the top four, I could see them possibly going after somebody like that. Reed Shepherd and Rob Dillingham from Kentucky, both of them. If you're looking at guard that can come off the bench and probably play like a role or being like a real scorer off the bench, I look at either of them. I'd probably lean Dillingham over Shepherd just from what I've seen. I feel like he has a little bit more like when he gets to the rim. I think he's more creative as a finisher. I feel like, but I mean, they're both really good, and I think Reed Shepherd is a better maybe spot up shooter, whereas Dillingham is more of he needs the ball in his hands more often. So if you're looking for a guy to just play a role, I can see why some people would take Shepherd. Um, Jacoby Walter from Baylor, that's another guy I have on this list, and Eves Missy from Baylor, both of them from Baylor. So Baylor's going to be a team that you should be looking out for. And then UConn, Donovan Clingan, even Stephon Castle, their point guard. I think both of them could be possibly Grizzlies picks. Both of them fit the kind of Grizzlies, like they feel like Grizzlies to me when I watch them play, especially Castle, because I mean he's not a great shooter necessarily, but I feel like he does so much other things in terms of like being a good passer, and getting to the rim, playing good defense. Like he does all the kind of the Grizzly stuff. So I would like to see him. Kyle Filipowski from Duke. Dayron Holmes from Dayton. That's another one that I'll be looking at. Which he's kind of moved up on a lot of draft boards, but because I mean coming into the season they kind of had him as a second round pick, and I kind of watched some of his early games and I was like, oh, I mean if he's a second round pick, definitely. Now I'm looking at mock drafts, they got him at like 15, 16, and I'm like, I don't know if they'll be able to get him. But that's just a couple of guys that I wanted to. Obviously, that's not everybody. Oh, Kevin McCullough Jr. from Kansas too. That's another wing prospect I think that kind of fits it. And then you said Johnny Furphy, which like I said, I haven't watched all the Kansas games, but from the ones I've seen, he looks like he's pretty good as well. So I'm with you on that. But it's all going to depend on what exactly they do with that pick. I think right now, I think they're probably going to stay where they're at just because they usually trade up in drafts. They haven't really traded back in drafts very often. I know they did kind of last year. They traded, but they basically just traded out. They didn't trade back. You know, I think one thing we could see is based on how far they jump up, it's like it might be a thing where they're going to stay at their pick until they're on the clock because they want to see who all goes. And they'll be like, all right, if this guy gets taken, we'll move back. But if he's there, we'll take him. Like, I think it's going to be one of those kind of things. But the track record is they move up. So who knows? Maybe if they get 7, they'll try to mess around and move up to 4. Like, you never know. Or move up to 3. I mean, they might have a chance. So, and like I said, there's a lot, but the ranges on these guys are bigger than they usually are, right? Usually, I feel like just going into the draft, you don't always have a clear number one, but you have like 2 or 3. Like, okay, it's gonna be one of these 3 guys going number one. Then you have some years where it's like the Wemby year or the Zion year where you're like, okay, this guy's going number one. But you usually know who the top 3 are. Like right now, I don't know if you could. It would not be smart to try to bet on the first 3 like picks of the NBA draft because there's no telling. There's probably 6, 7 dudes that I can see going number 1 overall.
Everything's plus odds.
Yeah, it is like because you really have no idea. Like I say, probably Sar. I still would lean Sar, but it depends on who gets the pick. Like you said, I mean, if the Wizards get number 1, I mean, I think they're gonna take Sar. But I've seen a lot of guys. A lot of people have put Zachary Richardson up there at number 1. I've seen people, like I said, Reed Shepherd. I've seen Matas Buzelis at number 1. I even saw one that had Cody Williams at number 1. And I was like, no, I don't think that's going to happen. But I'm like, dude, like the ranges that I've seen, I think it's higher than any other draft that I've like followed closely at least.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. It's probably the most. What class is it? See, now I'm going to have to look at it. But this class is one of those classes in recent, well, not recent memory, because the last, like you said, usually in a draft you got about a top 3 at least at worst, and then you got like another like 2 to 3 guys. Like 2021, you kind of knew Kate Cunningham, Jalen Green, Evan Mobley were like top 3 guys, possibly for the most part. Then after that, you knew probably Suggs was a guy that was for sure the top 5. Scotty Barnes was more of a lottery pick, and then he kind of jumped up in terms of like pre-draft workouts and all that. But like you had a good consensus. Last year, most people knew in some order it was going to be Wemby, Brandon Miller, and Scoot Henderson in the top 3. Like that was not just going to happen. Then
No,
obviously you
I
had
think that's the difference. There's usually like it's like after 3, it's like a divider line. It's like okay,
yeah
these are top 3, and then it's like after that you're not really sure. Then it's like so it's almost like usually the top 3 are kind of like in a tier of their own. But this year I don't think that's the case at all.
yeah yeah. So this is the class I was referencing. This class is like 2013 NBA draft class. Now, if anybody remembers the 2013 NBA draft class, I mean, I was very young at the time, but just looking back at it and obviously watching it then, I remember it because Anthony Bennett went number 1, and most people didn't have Anthony Bennett going number 1 at all. Then there's like Oladipo, Porter, and this is the class. This is Giannis' class. He went 15, right? Then Steven Adams was in there. Rudy Gobert was in there. Gobert was 27 in the class. Steven Adams went 12. Like the rookie of the year in the class went 11. Like, you know what I mean? I could see that happening this year. The same type of thing where you're looking at like the range on these guys is crazy. Like, I mean, I know Otto Porter was kind of consensus high lottery guy, Victor Oladipo, but none of them were like for sure going to be like at least from when I was so young, I remember none of them in my eyes were like number 1. Like, you know what I mean? Like their range was so different. Like they were going to go lottery, of course, but you didn't know exactly where. You didn't say, oh, they're top 2 or they're top 3. People obviously had their opinions of them, but like there wasn't a real consensus opinion. I mean, obviously, shoot. I mean, Anthony Bennett went number 1. I remember when he went number 1, everyone was like shocked. Even the analysts were shocked that he went number 1. Now, I don't think that's going to happen this year. It'd be funny if it did, but I don't think it's going to happen. But my point is, it's the same type of class. I'm not saying it's going to be as good or as bad or whatever you have an opinion on that class, but I'm saying in the ranges and the variance and all that, it's probably similar to that class. Because for the most part, the last 5 classes to me have been you kind of have a consensus 4, like I said, 3, and then the cutoff. Then you got your other guy. Like it's a lot easier. Whereas this class is all over the place, and you really won't get a more clear picture until you have the draft lottery. Then when you have the draft lottery, you have workouts, and then kind of maybe like a couple weeks or maybe a month before the draft, after the combine and all that and workouts, you might have a better idea of things. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting. But again, like I said, for a team like the Grizzlies, it's good for regardless because they're not looking for some franchise changer. That would be great if they can get one, but they're not looking for one. They're looking for somebody that can add to their core, to their piece. They got a core, Ja, Jaren, and Bane. And maybe, hopefully, hopefully Gigi and hopefully Vince. But point is, they need people to add to that. They don't need somebody to be the main guy of that. It'd be great to get another one because that means it just helps your chance of winning, but they're not pressed to look for that. They're looking for somebody that can add value on a cheap contract, well, not cheap contract, well, cheap, but like a rookie deal where you're not worrying about it. You can go over their right, you can go over their bird rights when you have to extend them, all that. Like it helps them financially. So yeah, they're in a good spot, at least in that. And then again, like I won't say they're playing with house money, but again, like it's not, I won't say there's too much stress, but again, it's another asset. And they need as many, and they already got more assets because of the trade deadline and all that. So it's just about how do you use those assets this offseason. So I'll be interested to see what they do.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll get into more draft stuff and all that kind of stuff as it gets closer, especially once the season is over. Obviously, we'll have a lot of time to really like dig in on those draft prospects and stuff like that. But one thing that I'm going to do, and I would suggest anybody who's going to be like big into the draft this year do the same. Obviously, there's a lot of NCAA tournament games going on. So you're not going to be able to watch all of them. But if you can, just try to pick 2 or 3 guys maybe that you like, that you think that the Grizzlies want to go for. Obviously, watch other games for if they're good or not, all that to enjoy the games. But there's a couple games where when they release the schedule, I'm going to be like, all right, I'm going to watch Filipowski for sure in that Duke game. I'm going to be watching Donovan Clingan. Like I said, I'm going to be trying to watch that Dayton game and watch some Dayron Holmes. There's going to be just a few teams that I'm kind of going to be looking for and I'm going to seek out during this process, because for me, like seeing these guys when they're playing, it's obviously you never really know what they're going to do in terms of in an NBA Game 7 playoff scenario. You never really know exactly what they can do, but the closest you're going to get to seeing like who's going to step up when they need to step up is in March Madness. It's win or go home, and it's win or your career could be over for some of these guys. So that's the kind of thing that I'm going to be looking for. But like I always say, I appreciate everybody who listened to this week's episode of the Next Gen Podcast here on the Bluff City Media Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Bryson Wright, and I was joined by my co-host, Alex Winton. And we'll see y'all next week when we will give you updates on all the guys we just talked about and hopefully talk about the return of Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Brandon Clarke. See y'all next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Next Gen Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a like and a comment wherever you download your podcasts. Head over to www.bluffcitymedia.co, where you will find comprehensive coverage of all things Memphis sports and how you can become an insider. We'll see you back here next time.